Aloha, everybody. Welcome to Covering the Cost with me, Annalisa Burgos, here at the Hawaii News Now Digital Center. And we are going to be touching the topic today of energy and electric bills. I know it's a very sensitive issue for so many people. I know for sure that we've been talking a lot about how that affects our wallets. I, for one, am very concerned about this issue myself, and I brought my electric bill in hand from HECO. But our guest today is going to talk all about it. He is an energy policy expert, a local industry watchdog for more than 3 decades here, Henry Curtis of the nonprofit Life of the Land. Good to have you with us, Henry.
Aloha, and glad to be here.
And such a good topic.
Yes.
So he is a policy wonk, so we don't want to wonk everyone out from the very beginning. So let's educate some folks, including myself, Henry, about what goes into an electric bill.
The electric bill includes all the costs that the utility faces, which is the fuel to create electricity, it's operating the grid, it's managing the company, it's vegetative management, it's fighting against wildfires, it's about paying taxes, it's every expense the utility has that the PUC is willing to pass on to ratepayers. The utility has to prove that the costs merit ratepayer financing.
Okay, and that's why there's all these types of information on there that the normal person may not make a lot of sense of. All these charges like non-fuel energy, energy cost recovery, IRP cost recovery. I mean, these are all charges that are on our bills.
Right, they're all categories of PUC approved costs. And a couple recently, a state legislative committee asked a HECO lawyer to come up and explain the bill. And he looked at the bill and said, I have to get back to you. It's an enormously complicated issue.
Yeah, and if all of you out there are looking at your bills and can't make sense of it, I think we're all in the same boat. But one thing we can agree on is that we feel like the rates are so high. Now, some of the statistics that we've seen is that Hawaii residents pay the highest electricity rates in the nation, almost 43 cents per kilowatt hour. And then that's more than double the national average. So when you see these types of statistics, I think a lot of us are just, upset by that. Why are we doing this? Why do we live with this? Can you break that down?
I can break it down in several ways. First, if you look at islands throughout the world, they pay much higher rates than continents. Continents have large systems. They have economies of scale. They can trade electricity with each other. There's all kinds of benefits to having a huge system. So islands everywhere have much higher rates than continents. That's one factor. Second factor is in Hawaii, we use virtually electricity for everything. On the U.S. continent, 75% of all ratepayers pay not only an electric bill, but a gas bill. Mm-hmm. They use gas for heating and cooling. And so when you compare our electric rates with only part of the rates on the continent, you get a distortion in the view. When you look at the total cost of all electricity that we buy and versus electricity and gas on the mainland, 8 states have higher customer bills than we do for residents.
Okay.
We're still above average, but we're not 2, 3, 5, 10 times the national average. We're just 10 or 20% higher.
Okay. But when you talk to the average person, I think they, maybe they're just looking at this couple $100, $300 per month that they're having to pay. And when we're talking about people that may not have the benefits of solar where they can lower their bills, is there a solution to lowering those rates or lowering the bills? Actually, maybe let's backtrack, because there is a difference between rates and bills, and we kind of use them interchangeably.
Right, and perhaps I can use a grocery store example, and this hasn't worked in many cases, so if you don't get it, that's fine.
Okay.
But if you go up and you see fruit that lists a certain price for pounds, and you come in and you weigh it to figure out what the total cost is, because it's how much it costs per unit and how much you're actually buying. Mm-hmm. And so our electric rates are really high, and our usage is really low. So we're paying a lot for very little. Mm-hmm. And that tends to balance out to somebody who's in the middle, who has middle rates and middle usage.
Okay, so as far as the policy goes, I mean, there's been several efforts to kind of get these bills lower for folks, right? Because the cost of living here, affordability crisis, all of that. We do live in a place where it's a monopoly, right? HECO provides and generates and delivers our energy here. Does that translate to the higher costs?
Well, from mid 2022 to mid 2024, you heard a lot of people saying, look, HECO's rates are higher than KIUC's. It's because HECO is a monopoly and KIUC is a cooperative. But if you look in January's figures, Oahu and Maui Island pay lower rates than Kauai rates because it shifts from month to month and it shifts on what the utility is doing. So you can't just say that it's because of a monopoly. That's one of many factors.
Many factors. Okay, and just to backtrack for folks who may not know, but KIUC is the cooperative on Kauai. So
That's
Kauai
correct.
is the only one that actually gets their energy through through the owner. It's a consumer-owned
Right.
co-op. Yeah. So let's go back to HECO, because again, the conversation tends to be around, and I know you've been watched out for HECO,
Yes.
which they've respected. I think your knowledge of this industry is respected, so they tolerate some of your your criticisms. But yeah, I mean, has HECO done enough to upgrade its systems and its infrastructure to help with some of these high costs? I know fossil fuels are the main power here. And I think critics say that's the reason why things are so high and why things are so expensive.
It is. Our use of fossil fuels is why it's expensive. Switching to renewables will lower the price, lower the cost to everyone, offset by the fact that we have never addressed climate change. Greenhouse gases are rising worldwide, and therefore we have to harden the grid, we have to guard against wildfires, and we have to do all these other mitigations. So the mitigations will drive up the price, while our converting to renewables drives down the price. And the price may go up or may go down, but it will go down. So it's relative. So you might say we're dropping in price relative to what would have happened if we didn't do this.
Okay, but you didn't answer the question if HECO was doing enough to upgrade all of this aging infrastructure.
HECO has a problem right now because of their wildfire. They have difficulty raising funds. And the funds they borrow cost more. And more is passed on to ratepayers.
And is that why you think we're seeing these higher costs in our bills?
Some of them, yes. So the more they spend to make the system more secure, the higher our bills are. But the more they convert to renewables, the lower our bills. And therefore, there's a tricky trade-off between the two.
Well, and
it's too complicated for the average person to understand.
Exactly. Well, let's backtrack and explain, if you can, in the simplest terms that you can, how rates are set. Because you say it is a factor of, it's many factors, right? It's not just how much we use. It's not just, again, it's not about monopoly. There's so many factors. Maybe if you can explain so that our average viewer can get an understanding.
What I did when a bill came up to try to suggest simplifying things, what I did is try to research what it would take to understand the bill. And my analysis is that you would need to study statistics, math, economics, engineering, finance, utility law, which varies by state, and public policies. And it might take anywhere from 400 to 3,000 hours to get the background to understand a bill.
This bill. When you say bill, we're talking about our HECO bills.
Correct.
Yes.
So that there are very, very few people in this state with the expertise to understand those bills, and I'm not one of them.
Why are we given this then?
I think it would be far simpler if the bill was very simple and said, this is the percent of the bill that's powered by renewables, this is the cost of that, this is the amount powered by fossil fuels, this is the cost of that, this is what's being spent on upgrading the grid or maintaining the grid, and that's the cost, and breaking it down by disaggregating it by subject matter. That would make it a lot simpler to understand. but we don't disaggregate, and most utilities around the world don't disaggregate.
Is there a reason for that? Is that like a federal law or something?
No, it's that they're seeking to, basically, each cost that is passed on through bills goes through a PUC silo, basically. You feed all the information in, you take it all out, you find out some cost that you're passing on, and it's some regulatory file. But it's not a consumer-friendly file. It's a file that regulators and utilities understand.
And people like you speak that language.
Somewhat.
Somewhat, okay. And that's
Somewhat. Very somewhat.
And that's well, and that's why it's so difficult for a lot of regular folks like myself to really make sense of it. I mean, it's nice to see my usage. I think that's useful when you're looking at one of your bills to break down how much it's used. But again, it's measured by kilowatt hour, right? If we're talking about, if you wanted to explain to folks the kilowatt hour unit and how maybe as a consumer we can manage our costs. Is there an easy way to kind of educate people on that front?
There is a way. The best way of reducing your bill is to decrease the amount of electricity you're using, which is measured in kilowatt hours. And so it's putting on a more efficient appliance like a refrigerator or an air conditioner, an Energy Star unit. It's putting in LED lights instead of regular lights. You may know that the old incandescent light bulb, when you put electricity into the light bulb, 93% came out as heat and 7% as light, and therefore you needed an air conditioner to remove the heat. But if you put in an LED, that goes away.
Okay, so those are helpful.
So any way you can to reduce your demand lowers your rates.
Will help lower the rate. Okay.
But there are...
Well, no, the bill, not the rate.
Lower the bill, right. Lower the
Yes.
customer bill. But one of the things that came up a few years ago that was curious is people would buy a new, more efficient refrigerator, and then they take their old refrigerator and put it in their garage for beer and that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. So that their new efficient refrigerator was very efficient, but their old one not only was inefficient, but now because the sunlight came through the garage, it was even more inefficient, driving up bills.
Oh, okay. So be aware of that, guys. So even if you get that energy efficient appliance, what can they do with the one that is using
Trade
too
it
much?
in. Get it. Trade it in.
Get rid of it. Don't try to use it somewhere else. Okay, that's a good tip. So again, rates are really that kilowatt per kilowatt rate.
Right.
That's when we talk about that versus bill, which is all of these charges plus how much you're using.
Right.
Plus, okay. So that I just want to make clear to folks that that's how we decipher that
Right.
at least. If
and you
anything
want-
comes out of this conversation, we understand that.
Yes, and reducing your bill is far more important than reducing the rate.
Yes, because even if we consume less than a lot of the states, we're still paying a certain rate, and that's why
Yes.
our bills are high. Okay, all right. I feel like people can understand that. That's the basic understanding of electric bills. And then when you talked about rates and how they're set with all these different factors, right? Was there anything else that we need to know? I mean, is there any solution to lowering rates that the average person can contribute to, or is that really a regulatory function?
We need to bring in as much rooftop solar as possible. We need to subsidize it for low to moderate income people so they can gain part of it. We need to have plug-in solar. There was a bill to have plug-in solar where you can actually put solar panels directly into your socket and reduce your bill from the electric grid. That was defeated this year because firefighters are concerned that when they're putting out a fire, if you have all these solar units around, they can be engaged even if the power is off for a building. And so we have to work that out. But getting as much solar into people's homes as possible and renters and condos is great.
Okay. Well, and talk to us about some of these other ways, other renewable formats. I mean, liquefied natural gas, geothermal, wind.
Geothermal is we know it's in Puna because the lava is pouring into the area. Other islands may still have hot spots that are not having more lava feeding them, but are sufficiently hot that they can be tapped. And therefore, there are proposals to drill holes in the ground in different parts of the state to see if we can find some of these hot spots. We have hydroelectric possibilities. We have dams on Oahu, Wahiwa Reservoir, for example. So we can create power from the dams. But the most important thing is we have a competitive bidding framework. So in order for these different renewables to come in, they actually have to prove they lower costs, because we don't want to bring in a renewable that raises everybody's bills and then was like,
that was the last thing we would need, right? So anyway, Henry, we have to take a quick commercial break, but we will be right back. We are having a wonderful discussion about why our electric bills are so high here in Hawaii, and it's not because of what you may think. So we'll be right back with Covering the Cost.
From the moment you wake up.
Hawaii News Now brings you the stories that impact your day.
With more on the breaking news, we go live to Casey Lund.
Ready with the push alert? I'm going live.
We have an update to the breaking news we brought you this morning on Sunrise.
Okay, guys, as soon as this wraps, toss to Mahia.
And we've been covering this story all day.
Now we go live to Mahia for a new development.
Stand by for breaking news. They just captured the suspect.
That's confirmed?
Yes, sources just confirmed it.
The news you need the moment it breaks.
Here on Hawaii News Now.
Coming up today at 1:30, it's the Drew Point. We're going to be sitting down together to break down the entirety of the Hawaii weather pattern, and you can catch it on the H&N streaming app available on Roku, Apple TV, or Amazon Fire.
Welcome back to Covering the Cost with me, Annalisa Burgos, and I have Henry Curtis in the studio with us talking about energy bills and electricity rates, which are different. So you'll have to watch the beginning of this podcast to learn about that. But going back to what we were talking about, different renewable energies, and we mentioned liquefied natural gas, which is a fossil fuel, but is it a better alternative to petroleum?
it would take about 5 to 10 years to build the infrastructure to begin importing it. Now, predicting what the price of gas will be in 10 years is sort of like predicting whether it will rain or snow in 10 years in a particular place. Nobody knows, but they can guess. Just today, 20% of the world's gas is being cut by one of the countries producing it.
Yeah, well, we know because of the Iran war going on, so that's already affecting our gas prices.
So we actually have no idea what the price of LNG will be in 10 or 20 years, but we know that that methane gas is released in all aspects of gas production. And methane gas is a very powerful greenhouse gas. So the question is, does LNG actually reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, or does it only reduce it in Hawaii while increasing it globally? That's one of the problems. The second problem is, do we shift our focus away from renewables and towards fossil fuels while we're suing the fossil fuel industry for releasing greenhouse gases? We're going to promote one fossil fuel while we're suing other fossil fuel producers. And so it's being proposed as a solution, but the analysis is immense. And Life of Land does not support it. Most environmental groups don't support it, but it's being pushed by the governor and by the State Energy Office. And HECO is open to it. The consumer advocate is open to it, but it's going to be a long, intense public fight starting at the Public Utilities Commission.
Okay. Well, and you did mention that Life of the Land does not support, you don't support
Right.
LNG coming into Hawaii. Tell us a little bit about Life of the Land. Let's backtrack a little bit and tell us about, because you really are an energy policy wonk, but at the same time, it's through a social justice lens.
Life of Land was founded in February 1970 by 15 women concerned about pollution, that there were no water treatment plants off the coast. We had immense numbers of lawyers in our early years. In 72, for example, we had 14 lawyers on staff when 80 law students wanted to work for the summer. We got 19 interns, and there was no law school in the state. So we were the group that marched into Hawaii and entered all these fights in before agencies to transform the way energy policy is handled, land use, water use, other things like that, pesticides. Over the years, we've covered a number of different topics, but more recent years, we're covering energy and social justice issues. We see environment through a justice lens. We see it through how it impacts all people rather than an elite, how everybody can benefit, but we all have to do it collectively, and we have to realize that pulling people up from the bottom is more important than making sure the top get richer.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because when we talk about social justice and economic access, again, affordability, a lot of the people that have these high electric bills cannot afford, like we were saying, the renewable energies, that people can install solar. We were talking off air about how I spent like $20,000 to put in solar into my home. And, I had to take out a loan for that. People don't have that luxury. So how can you ensure that people can benefit from renewable energy without raising their costs on a daily basis?
Part of it has to be that we have a really aggressive and subsidized program to help people at the bottom get what others can get. And bottom, I mean people who don't have great credit, or who are renters, or who have rooftops that can't support solar. We need to subsidize them so that we can all participate in the transformation. And one of the ways is to transform all our vehicles into electric vehicles, to get everything, all our transportation, powered by the grid. And that would require actually strong support, strong subsidies, so that people in less privileged communities can participate. And one way of measuring it is not the average, but what happens to the lower 20% or the lower 10%. Look at whether the lower 10%, how much of them are getting energy efficiency, how much of them are getting help on rooftop solar, how many of them are getting these other benefits, because that should be the measure. Once we begin from the bottom, then everybody will rise.
Are you seeing a lot of the counties offer those subsidies? I know federally we're not seeing a lot of that support anymore.
No, if you look at something like HIHEAP, which is an acronym, HIHEAP, which is a subsidy of people who have economic challenges for rate payings, the vast majority of people who actually need it don't get it. We're just getting a percent. A percent is better than none, but we need to do far more to help people who need it.
Yeah, we're talking not just about low-income folks or families, but also the kapuna, right? People
Yes.
that are paying, like the renters, they can't afford on their fixed incomes either. So, yeah, I think, and we're talking about the infrastructure, continuing this petroleum-based generators, right? And that's part of the problem. Are we able to get those upgraded if HECO continues to control the generation part of it? Okay, I'm going to transition. There we go. Going into the bill that we were talking about, that is proposing restructuring HECO, where they separate the generation from delivery services. There's that motion that Senator Glenn Wakai, the measure that's going to be coming onto the floor next week, I believe, to kind of see the feasibility of this, right? The Public Utilities Commission has to come up with an infrastructure around this.
Yes, and if the PUC finds a way, then they have to bring legislation back. But their testimony was that it's not a good idea to begin with.
And your testimony also.
Right.
Yeah. And why is that? Because
if you-
it sounds like it's common sense.
If you separate all the generation from the grid, his idea, I think, was that you have a separate company coordinate all the people who want to sell electricity.
Yeah. All the independent producers.
And so you'd have two monopolies. You'd have the monopoly that coordinates all the acquisitions, and you'd have another monopoly that handles all the transmission, all the deliveries, and you'd have a pipeline between the two. And that's basically what HECO is right now. There's two parts of the company. One gets it, and one delivers it. So he would wrench it apart into these two monopolies, which would have to separate the entire financial and workforce into these two monopolies. And how does that actually decrease rates?
The argument has always been competition, right? Because HECO plays in the power generation space, it kind of puts them in a dual role where they are bidding for the similar contracts that these independent producers would be bidding for as well. So isn't there like a conflict there? What incentive do they have to accept a bid from an outside source?
In the latest rounds of acquisition, they get only like 1 out of 10 of theirs. Most of the new systems coming on are independents. They have to bid in, and there's a separate branch of the utility with a wall between them, a separate branch that evaluates all the bids, and there are monitors that the PUC oversees that make sure that HECO is not cheating. So if HECO can actually come in and beat a price of an independent, they can get something. But most of the new projects coming in are independent.
So you are confident in this competitive bidding process, that it's enough to keep kind of rates stable and lower bills eventually?
Yes, with the caveat on the continent where you have like grids that have 50 million, 100 million, 200 million customers, it's a lot more competitive. But on islands, it's a lot harder to have a competitive market, but we are working on that.
Okay. Yeah, because I know that was one of the concerns is even though all of these renewable systems are coming online, or at least being proposed and by these independent producers, we're not reaping any of those benefits yet in our bills. That was an argument.
We're reaping some, but because the cost of maintaining the grid is going up to fight wildfires and to fight against climate change, and because other costs are going up, the rates are lower than they would have been if this hadn't occurred. So it's like a lower slope going up.
Oh, I see. So Lahaina really does continue to have an impact.
Yeah, insurance rates are going up for the utility. Insurance rates are going up not just for HECO, but utilities across the country. Insurance is getting a lot harder to buy because insurance companies are seeing all these wildfires and their enormous cost. So that's one thing, but there are a lot of different costs. Inflation is flying up. So there's a lot of different
There's
things.
a war going on.
A war going on.
So that's going to...
Wait. 1 war? 2 wars? 5 wars?
Several wars.
Several wars.
But Venezuela apparently will give us some oil.
Apparently.
That's what they say. But going back to, again, the impact of Iran, I'm glad that you mentioned that because, again, that's, even though the president has said it might drag on for a month or 2 months, that could, I mean, we saw what happened with Iraq. So, again, is this something that concerns you as someone that's watching energy policy?
Yeah, a lot of oil flows through the Persian Gulf. And if that is all shut down because of this war that is spreading through the area, that can have a drastic price. And because Hawaii is powered by petroleum, that can raise our rates. And our rates fluctuate month to month.
Yeah, okay, we're talking about, again,
and
rates.
as rates go up, our bills will go up.
Yeah, because right now it's at about 43 cents per kilowatt hour.
Now that varies by island. So when all the islands are different.
Oahu is 43 cents.
Okay.
I think Big Island, Hawaii Island, I saw was like 48 cents. I think I had it somewhere. You can pull it up. Our wonderful executive producer can pull up this graphic of Oahu. I think the last thing that HECO had published was 43 cents from 2024.
And Molokai and Lanai tend to be the
Oh my
highest.
gosh, 50 cents. 50 cents for Molokai and Lanai. And then Maui has 44 cents. And then Hawaii Island has 48 cents.
Yeah.
And then I don't have Kauai's KIUC numbers, but...
No, but in 2024, I believe overall for the year, they were beginning to change from having the lowest rates and therefore good customer bills to where Oahu and Maui are now have better rates, and therefore bills are relatively speaking.
They fluctuate. All right. But again, these are all the types of factors that go into our bills. So it's not as easy to say, again, this monopoly is overcharging us, because I feel like that's a narrative that's out there. You know, this monopoly that HECO has, they just decide whatever our rates are, which, you know, is unfair to say, right?
Well, the rates, they have to get the rates approved by the Public Utilities Commission.
So they should be blaming the Public Utilities Commission.
Well,
too.
no, I wouldn't say blaming them, but I'd say It's complicated on all the entities participating, and as I said, it's way more complicated than I can understand.
But you are the one who would know most of it, I would say. And that's why I'm so happy that you're here. I mean, next year, there was this law that passed, too, that you could have a choice. Am I correct? That HECO, I was reading about this, and correct me if I'm wrong or if I'm not explaining it correctly, but HECO will be required to let independent electricity producers use its grid for a fee, and then the consumer can choose whether it wants to sign up with HECO or whether it signs up with another one of these producers.
That's true to two extents. First, we're not guaranteeing that the Public Utilities Commission will approve it.
Okay, so it's not been approved yet.
And second, it's only for large customers, so residents are cut out of it. It's commercial customers who have larger loads.
Okay. Well, that's a benefit for our business community then.
If you subscribe, if you get a product from a certain business and they have lower rates and lower bills, that's great. But if you are buying goods from other companies and the savings are just for them, that doesn't help you. So it's a trade-off again.
Okay. Well, I wanted to see if that would benefit us or if we'd see lower rates. But again, we were talking about shipping costs going up because of the gas issue with Iran. I mean, that's another kind of fallout, right? Aside from our home energy bills, shipping costs and
Yes.
delivery of goods to us.
Yes.
Correct.
And the wheeling concept that you're talking about has been very popular by a large number of advocates for decades, but many of them don't show up in the PUC proceeding because it's too complex to understand. So at the PUC is sort of the insiders. So we're there.
You're advocating for us.
Right, but the consumer advocate is there, but then it's mostly insiders, energy companies, energy trade groups, and utilities.
Okay. Well, another piece of it I wanted to bring up too was the performance-based regulation, some incentives. Will that help lower costs? Maybe just explain real quickly about that and whether that will generate savings for us.
The simplest way of talking about performance-based regulation is what incentive is there for HECO to cut rates?
Yes.
It's not much but if you say to them, if you find a way of cutting rates by $3 million, pass $2 million on to the ratepayers and keep $1 million for yourself. That might not sound good for people, but it's actually an effective way of reducing rates and reducing bills as a result. Now, performance-based regulation is actually looking at several things that can increase or decrease. There are several incentives that can go up or down, several that are penalties to the utility or rewards. The utility has been penalized recently for how their grid operates, for lowering reliability. They get rewards for putting more renewables on the system. So it's supposed to be a way of encouraging the utility to do the right thing and allowing ratepayers to share some of the benefits and allowing the utility to get additional profits as a result.
Do you feel like it's working?
This is a docket a regulatory proceeding that opened at the Public Utilities Commission in 2018. It was first implemented a 5-year project in 2021 to 2026. Is the first 5-year block. It's an enormously complex proceeding, one of the most complex that we've ever been in, and would be very difficult to explain in a minute here.
Well, luckily, you have a blog. Ilinai, or tell us about it.
Ililani Media.
Ililani.
Ililani is the Hawaiian word for when it's raining and it's sunny out.
Oh, okay. I like that word. Okay. And why did you choose that for your energy blog?
I like the idea that the wind comes sweeping down off the mountains, bringing rain while it's still sunny.
Okay, so ililani.media is where you can find Henry's blog. I mean, this was such a wonderful discussion. I feel like so much more educated about my energy bill after this, Henry. If there was one takeaway that you would leave our viewers with about the cost of energy here, how we can improve it, are we on the right path? You know, it just feels like there's so many factors that are weighing us down, you know, especially now with the war.
The most effective way people can help is finding ways to reduce their electric bills. Part of it is turning off systems when they're not being used. A lot of systems still plugged in pull power on even though they're turned off. So you can get an energy audit on homes. Go to Hawaii Energy, which is a energy efficiency utility, and they will help find ways to reduce your bill. So an energy audit is the most important, and then actually reducing the bill through using less electricity.
Okay, that it comes down to us in the end.
Yes.
Doing our part to help as well.
Yes.
So thank you so much. It was such a wonderful discussion with you. Henry Curtis here with Life of the Land, Energy Policy Wonk. If you want to know more about their group, you can go to their website as well. Lifeoftheland.org.
Yes.
Okay, and then the blog as well, ililani.media. Thanks so much. Thanks for joining us. And that's it for us here. I'm Annalisa Burgos with Covering the Cost. We'll see you next time.